Good evening, everybody. My name is Slumdog Millionaire. Welcome back to episode 3 of our D&D Quest Log, or DM's Log, or whatever you want to call it. We are literally just finished up about 45 minutes ago. Not feeling too great about this one, I'll be honest with you. We left off last episode with the party being basically held at sword point by Creve, who is the leader of Winterscore. Basically, he had sent the crew in the last episode, sent the party to capture a keep, or not capture it, clear it out. It was like called the Cursed Keep, a lot of undead in there, and clear it out and come back and report to him. And they cleared it out, but then they also took 200 gold pieces out of a chest and a couple of enchanted items, one being an enchanted shield and another an enchanted dagger. They came back, told Creve that they had done it, and he gave him a little snidely grin and said, "All right, you're under arrest. I'm placing you in prison for stealing from the crown. For all intents and purposes, the crown." And that was where the last episode had ended. They were at, like, frozen in time with all of Creve's personal guard, all the Dragonborn, pointing spears at him. So as this episode began, they, asked them, "What do you want to do?" And they were like, "Well, I don't really know, whatever," talking amongst themselves. And then through the front door burst Barrelhelm, who was in the last game session we played. He was the captain of the guard, of the Dragonborn. Surprise, surprise. Because Winterscore is home to a lot of Dragonborn at this point. And he burst through the door, was all like busted up and cut up and bleeding and injured really bad. And he's like, they're attacking the outer ring, the outer the poor district. He's like, Creve kind of halts and he's like, "What? Who's attacking what?" And it's like, "It's orcs. They're under siege. The outer ring. It's Theros." And at that name, Creve kind of winces and gets all mad. He's like, and he looks at the party and goes kind of silent for a second, gives him a grin, and he goes, "Okay, I'll make a deal with you." It's like, "You bring me the head of Theros Witherbrand, and all is forgiven. I'll give you the information on Chul, who the party's looking for. Will be basically even." And everybody's like, "Well, how do we know how can we trust you? You screwed us last time." And he's like, "Well, I'm saying this in front of all of my men here. This is a guarantee. So do this, and I'll even give you 50 or either 50 or 100 gold apiece, which is a ton, but 100 gold apiece to bring me his head." And he sends him out. And then Barrelhelm comes running out behind him, and at this point, he pulled out this flask and took a swig, and it was like a potion of regeneration, which I kind of made up, but it does 1d4 healing for 3 turns, I want to say. So however that equates to seconds, it just does a lot of healing. So he's a lot better, a lot clothed, a lot more healthy, and he comes running up behind the party, and he's like, "Hey, I know, what was going on in there? What happened? Why were you, why were they all pointing their spears at you?" And they're like, "Well," they gave him the spiel, what happened, and he looked kind of like upset and really disappointed and kind of angry about what's going on with Creve. And he just kind of bypasses it and says, "Listen, go. This is where you'd find." He gives them directions. Basically, to the west is the the merchants district. To the east is the sewers, the poor district, like the poorer of the richer district, if that makes any sense. But towards the sewers, to the south is to the outer ring of the poor district where all the fighting's happening, and to the north would be back into the keep. So that's not where you want to go. So they were like, "Well, we want to go to the merchants district because that's we haven't gotten anything deciphered yet, or identified yet, like the enchanted items they had gotten from the Cursed Keep. Since all this crap happened so fast, Creve never confiscated any of it, so they still have all the stuff they had before." So they go to the merchants district and they meet up with, let me find her name because I had her all opened up earlier. She was she's the arcane shop owner, like the magic shop owner. This is Aerith Wayside. So she is a high elf. She's 375 years old. Pretty old, but actually not really an elf aging. 6 foot 3 inches tall, 165 pounds. They come in, they are talking to her. They're like, you know, hey, we need to get this stuff deciphered or identified. So Duran, my brother, gives her the shield that he had gotten. It turns out to be the shield of the Bulwark, which I've made up, you know, for why not. And it's a tower shield. It gives you +3 AP, not AP, I'm sorry, AC. And then it grants you the ability to bash, which is a strength check basically. It knocks the enemy back 5 feet and deals 1d4 damage, I believe. On top of that, on a failed save from them, on a successful save, it still does. It knocks them back the 5 feet, but doesn't do any damage. So that was that, and then somebody else had the enchanted dagger, which was I forget what the name of it was, but it basically did 1d4, or no, 1d6 +3 fire damage, and then if it's a crit, it does 1d4 damage, or 1d4 burning for 2 turns. Again, I'm flying by the seat of my pants here, so some of this stuff might be like way off, or either way too powerful, or not powerful enough, and it's just, you know, whatever. We're just kind of having fun with it, so it's fun. But anyways, so they're in there and they're talking, and excuse me, they're like asking her questions, and she's really giving Duran, the Dragonborn, the stink eye, you know, like kind of like, what the hell is going on? Like, why are you here? And they're really not crazy about him. And so they start asking her questions like, what's going on? Why are you so upset? Like, no one in the inner district seems to have known, or seems to have any real concern that the outer districts are under attack. And so they're like, what's going on? How come nobody's, you know, going crazy here? And she's like, well, this is how it's been for a very long time. Unless you've lived here for quite some time, this is just how it goes. The more wealthy races are in power, and the poorer races aren't. So that's just the way it goes, unfortunately. So I start talking to her and going over stuff and just having, you know, just getting general backstory, in all honesty. So it's, they start asking, like, she asks, what are you doing for the king? What are you doing for, or not the king, but what are you doing for Kriv? Why are you working for him? What do you have any deal? And they basically said, well, he said that Theros Witherbrand is attacking attacking the city from the outer walls. So he said, he told us to bring him his head, and if we brought him his head, then, you know, he would pay us, give us information, what have you. And she gets kind of, not concerned, but a little bit like, okay, whatever, you know, and asks them, like, what do you know about this city? Because this is nowhere near what it used to be like. And so she, you know, they say, well, not much. My brother, Duran had been here years ago, but not a ton of years ago. So, like, things had kind of been similar. And she goes and proceeds to give them information about it. Basically, years ago, the city was very different from what you see here today. There was little division, and for close to 100 years, there had been what you could call peace. No one race held power over any other. Excuse me. 55 years ago, Karl Turatoth led an attack on Winterscore. He proclaimed that in the name of Talos, the god of storms, that this city was to be ruled by the Dragonborn. He conquered the city and publicly murdered Therosoth's wife and 2 young sons in front of the king as an example, and to end the bloodline of Winterscore's rulers. To prove once and for all the Dragonborn were and are the superior race. Then to add further insult to Therosoth, Krall cast him out into the frozen mountains to let him freeze to death, denying him even a warrior's death. No soul ever knew the fate of King Therosoth Azerod. Most assume he froze to death somewhere in the wilderness. Others say he wandered south of the Great River, and still others say he wandered west towards the western mountain. 25 years later, Krall's son, Kriv, murdered his father in cold blood, claiming his rightful place as the ruler of Winterscore. He has been in power for 30 years. Kriv has always been careful to search for knives to his back, often removing those around him who he sees as a threat. He keeps at least 4 personal guards around him at all times. Now, if you're paying attention, if you just heard me ramble through that whole thing, what you might notice is that I never gave you any information about who the king was. It's because I'm on a sidebar here. I got really bogged down in details. I'm trying to build a whole world here, and I want to have the world be active without the players involved. Like, whether or not they do this, this is going, like, whether or not they do A, B and C are going to happen to this place, whether or not they do it. Which sounds simple enough, but it's really difficult to keep everything up here and at the ready all the time. So I wrote like a whole bunch of different notes and papers and just typed stuff out, but then I put them all in different papers. So like it's impossible to find this stuff on the spot. So like it was really, I mean, I'm not super crazy about how the game went tonight because things felt off to me. I felt off. Now, granted, we didn't start for 2 hours later than we expected to because the one guy that was supposed to be here ran into some problems with his family or whatever and just couldn't make it on time. So, you know, the shit happens. I get it. But still, it was kind of a rushed night. So by the time we got started, all that stuff was kind of like, I wanted to get it out there and just like, get some exposition. Like, okay, this is why this is happening. Like, this is what is happening here. Whether or not you were involved, this is what's happening. And I need to get this to the point where, like, okay, those that care about story, this is what's going on. Those that don't, this is what you get out of it that's sweet, you know? So as this happens, as they're talking, the place gets broken into because on the way to the shop, they've been taking perception checks to notice that behind them there was two cloaked figures that were trailing them from a great distance. They're keeping an eye on them, you know, and they basically figured out to themselves that this was Creve keeping an eye on the party to like make sure they weren't going to go around and do anything weird. So they get to this place, they get to the arcane shop, and they go in and they're talking to Aerith, right? That, yeah, Aerith. And they're talking to her, and they go through all this stuff, and they get their stuff redone. But no one ever rested. No one rested or healed or anything like that. But in the conversation, who was it? Crap, the one guy, my buddy Paul, I can't remember his name right now, but he's the tiefling necromancer. He's on the way to the necromancing path. He got a potion of regeneration, which is an enchanted vial, or you know, like a potion, basically, like a bottle, that when you drink it, it does 1d4 healing for 3 turns and refills magically over every 24 hours once. So she gives it to him, and like basically, since he was an elf, she doesn't trust the dwarf. My buddy, the dwarf, had been like talking shit on the whole time and like just acting like a real pain in the ass. She immediately didn't like him, and she already has a natural propensity to not like Dragonborn because of who runs the city. So she automatically does not like Duran. And then the drow, the other guy in the party, was real quiet this whole time, so like keeping to himself, and so she wasn't really paying much attention to him. But the tiefling was yammering away, and so she gives him this bottle. He, you know, as she's handing him the bottle, the cloaked figures, who ended up being Creve's men, kick in the door and they fight. And then as they're fighting, there's two, I believe, two half-elf scouts, like more of Creve's men, kick in the top door, or the top window, and they come in from the top floor and they enter the fight halfway through. Now, this wouldn't have been a big deal. This would not have been a really big fight if it weren't for the fact that the party hadn't rested. So everyone's hurting and exhausted. I believe the barbarian, our dwarf, was like totally shot. Like he had either one rage left or none, and so he was like hurting. We lost 2 people in the fight. We lost Duran and Chester, the dwarf. Both were incapacitated, but Aerith is bad news. And so she was like a really powerful mage, obviously. The only reason she's kept in the city, and this is revealed through conversation in the game, is she's a high elf. And in the upper districts, there's no high elves ever, because they're just considered an inferior race. But she's the only one in the city that knows really high-end arcane stuff, and so Creve kept her around because she's the only one who knows it. But basically, she just said this whole, like, after the fight was over, everybody, you know, we beat them, thank God. After the fight was over, she basically says, yeah, this kind of crap happens all the time. They burst in here, we fight, you know, but it's the guards trying to flex their muscle, you know what I mean? So that's where we ended. Like, it was a super short session. I know this video is kind of trailing on here because I'm rambling. But not the greatest time. Like, I don't know. Everybody said they had a good time, but these guys, I've known them since I was 5, and so they wouldn't be the ones to be like, yeah, this was terrible. Like, they wouldn't say that to me, even if it was terrible. But I just didn't feel it. You know what I mean? So they said they had a decent time, and since it was kind of a rushed session, I had a whole bunch of other crap prepared that we never got to, and I'm kind of thankful we didn't, because now it gives me an opportunity to kind of hone things and get it back to like where I want it to be. So anyhow, I'll let you guys go there because we're at 15 minutes and 12 seconds right now, so that's great. But I'll make another video next week, and we'll go from there. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Later.